Hello and welcome to the Any Given Sunday Australia podcast, the only podcast that's now running 11, 5 and 1. Joining me, as always, Charlie Pick. That 11, 5 and 1's it's been better.
Yeah, the season's getting a lot more realistic for Team AGS. I think we might have been September champs, Team AGS, but October has arrived and there is some soul searching. But hopefully we can come out of the bye and turn it around.
It's been it's a tough week. You're a little bit under the weather. Danny Boy has shipped off as he does every year. The only thing I'm really happy about is that 5 and 1 is Packers are only 1 and 1 of those, mate. So we're technically the top of the AGS ladder.
Yeah, technically those draws, you're really going to enjoy those draws by the end of the season.
Yeah, that's going to help.
But yeah, it's interesting, and that's really sort of where we're at the season now. The early enthusiasm. You look at our three teams: the Eagles, the Packers, and Bills. They've all had a reality check along the way, despite some unbridled enthusiasm by all of us. And there are some other teams that, whether or not we wrote them off at the start of the season, we definitely had big question marks, but they seem to be turning it around. And I guess one of the great things about football is every team has to play 17 games before we get to the playoffs, and anything can happen. And unfortunately for the Bills, it did. But we'll get to that soon enough.
You might say anything can happen on any given Sunday, mate.
That's exactly right.
It's speaking of looking back, if you look at especially the AFC side, we're back in 2004. We've got the Patriots are right up there. I think they're above your Bills at the moment. We've got the Chargers right up there. Like, it's ridiculous how the Colts are number one team in football.
I was going to say the resurgent Indianapolis Colts, whether they're back to the Andrew Luck / Peyton Manning level of confidence and belief in themselves, but they're playing very, very good football. And from a team that, people weren't talking too much about them at the start of the season of being a force, but they are consistent.
I think one
and they're very
person
hard
was
to
talking
stop.
about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've said enough times on this podcast that that Indy were going to be good this season, but at the same time, I was pretty sure the Bills were going to waltz into the Super Bowl without breaking a sweat. So let's. I'm not standing by all of my predictions from the start of the year.
When you said good, I don't think you meant 5 and 1.
Yeah, I thought maybe 3 and 2 would have been much closer achievable at this point.
Let's get straight into the 2-minute drill, mate. Brian Branch. It was a very interesting finish to the Chiefs and Lions. He's ended up with a 1-week suspension for the altercation at the end of the game. Did you see? What are your thoughts on it?
I did see the incident, and it's one of those things that when it first happened, it looked completely out of nowhere and egregious. But then I got to credit to the coverage. They ended up doing a play-by-play of what went down.
I couldn't believe it. Normally they just ship straight away from it, but no, they went back and it was great.
It was unusual, and there was a handshake offered that was refused, that was not taken well, that involved a push to Hollywood Brown's head or even a slap across his helmet, you would say, and Hollywood Brown responded. Or was it Juju Smith-Schuster? Sorry. And in the end, it was Branch that crossed the line and maybe deserves the suspension. I'm not entirely sure if it was worth missing a match for. But Dan Campbell apologised on behalf of the Lions organisation to Andy Reid and the Chiefs for the incident, and I think it does. I think it speaks a lot to the fact that the Lions were really disappointed that they were shown up in prime time by the Chiefs, who played very good football.
You could tell there was a lot of frustrations coming out, and Branch actually come out and said post game that there was a fair bit of niggle during the game. Smith-Schuster actually ran through Branch pretty heavily through his back, and no foul called, and Branch took exception to that, and it showed at the end of the game. But Yeah, you could see that there was no the Patrick Mahomes hand. He didn't even look at Patrick Mahomes. He was just eyes straight for. There's been a couple of angles which has been good to watch. It was just eyes for Smith-Schuster, and he knew exactly what he was going to do.
Yeah, and just to, congratulations to the NFL and ESPN for just capturing every possible angle of post-match BS on behalf of the players. It's really great effort to the coverage team.
Even to the point where they were wrestling and took out the camera, which was great.
Yeah.
I think 1 week was fair enough though. You can't just go up and whether something happened during the game, it's not ideal, especially for Branch. But you can't just go up and sucker punch him at the end of the game.
And we've seen it before. Like someone can have done a push, a shove, said something, even a minor infraction. But if you're the player that does the big thing that everyone sees, you're going to go down every time.
Yeah, 100%. It's always the one that reacts that gets caught. So, Speaking of reactions, and I was a little bit surprised when I saw this, just purely by the circumstances that this team is in. The Titans have fired their head coach.
Yeah, it felt too early, didn't it? I'm not saying that anyone was watching the Titans going, "Oh, these are contenders," but of all the teams in the NFL, they were the one that are rebuilding. They're starting from scratch, and they've got, they've got new talent learning the playbook still. I think it's pretty harsh to sack the head coach this early in the season, and also they had some signs of life.
That's what I think. Like they
played a little bit of football that showed that they can hang around, and that they were the team that we said 2 or 3, maybe 4 wins by the end of the season. They'd actually feel pretty good about themselves. They were starting to get on their way,
and that's where I think my biggest shock was in the previous week. They've had a pretty decent comeback. No one was coming out and thinking these guys were going to be 8-9 win season. So, yes, they are 1-5 or 1-4, depending. I don't know if they've had the bye yet, but yeah, I was blown away when I saw that they had fired Brian Callahan and Mike McCoy has come in and taken over, and he's got a good stretch to try and plead his case for the top job.
Yeah, the games that he's got ahead are that opportunity. It's interesting. When something like this happens, though, it makes you wonder what the vibe is inside the building, because there might be a story that we don't know about.
Something else happened.
Yeah, or it could even be, whilst on field they may have started to have a little bit of success, it could be behind closed doors. The team isn't gelling together, and maybe it's something that they've done well to keep inside the building, but maybe in there's more turmoil than we see. I'm sure over coming days, as always happens, we will get drip-fed little bits of the story that make it clearer. It often happens, you watch this every season, a head coach will lose their job and you think you know what the story is, but the head coaches know a lot of reporters too, and they know how to drop tiny little bits of story out to the media to show what was going on. And then there'll be other coaches that are worried about their reputation and they want to get their side of the story out, and a few players are going to whisper to some reporters as well. There is definitely more of a story there, and we'll find it out.
It'll be drip fed. All of a sudden, Cam Ward's an arsehole and hard to deal with. But I don't know. You normally get the number 1 pick, and you're not expecting much the next year, and so to fire your coach within 6 games is a bit outrageous.
Yeah, we say one and done for a reason. Normally, you get the one. Normally you get a season. You get a season to try and make it work.
Yeah. The 2 best teams. Now, I laughed at this when I started writing this down. We were shitting on the South the whole preseason. The dumpster fires that are the AFC and NFC South. The 2 best teams in football, the Bucs and the Colts, both from the South. Even the Jags, you can throw them up there. They're not bad. The South is serious this year.
They are. They've proven us wrong. I think we might have to pull those preview episodes off. We'll have to take them down because we look too bad now with what we thought of that division. Both divisions. But and different stories as well. But I think both teams have, you would say, MVP candidates. And one is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If you are watching the way that Baker Mayfield is playing, he is the standout quarterback in the league this season.
Well, he's plummeted. He's definitely one that's plummeted in the markets for MVP.
Yeah, and early on we were saying, it's all about, every game. I think the first 4 games, like he led a game-winning drive to come from behind and win, and he was doing it consistently. Now they've shown that they can lead from the front and win as well. And their defense is no joke. Like, they really get the job done, and they've got a front that is a lot of trouble. Their secondary has some real standout performance. The Buccaneers are a serious contender this year, and Baker is at the center of it. And then at Indy, you've got Indiana Jones, who's doing very well. I think I sent you a meme also. I texted you this week that Anthony Richardson had another kind of elaborate injury this week. And so I've decided that the Indianapolis Colts, they are Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull. So Indiana Jones is Daniel Jones, and the Crystal Skull is Anthony Richardson. He will just shatter given half a chance.
Was it a pre-game injury?
Yeah, it was a
pre-warm-up.
Pre-game injury, and it was something rather exotic. I'm trying to remember what it was, but it was. We'll have to fact check that and come back with the information. But I'm just trying to. I'll tell you now. It was an eye injury before the game. And so anything to do with above his shoulders seems to be a problem at this stage for Anthony Richardson.
I'm out. I'm tapping out.
But the MVP candidate in Indy is Jonathan Taylor, who is running. You would say the way that Saquon Barkley was running last year, in a way that people were talking about Saquon as a possible MVP candidate. The fact that he is having such an impact on those games, he is so hard to stop. And my hot take would be, I feel like he's doing more than Saquon was last year. Ooh. I think he is, I genuinely think that he, even in the passing game, he's having a bigger impact. But the way that he is running, it's I was going to say it's like something we haven't seen before, but probably since the last time Jonathan Taylor was in MVP contention before his knee injury.
2 or 3 years ago. The other thing about the Bucs, I love the Jonathan Taylor hot take. I actually, we'll get it in the preview, I'll get some stats up to see how he is comparing to Saquon this year. But the Bucs, the scary thing for them, Mike Evans is missing, Godwin's missing, Mbuka on the weekend got injured, Bucky Irving's out. So there is 4 main weapons, and he's still winning. Still getting the job done. And he is throwing some lovely deep balls. Like so those flashes that we saw in college and then his first season with the Browns, that he loves to uncork a deep ball and he can just throw absolute ropes. And the team's lifting around him with all of those injuries. Like, the team is stepping up as well. And they are trouble. They are trouble, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Not a hot take to say they are legit contenders this year, which is awesome. Last one before we get into a couple of the games. The 2 undefeated teams have now gone 0-4 in the past 2 weeks. It just happens to be your Bills and Danny's Eagles, so it's nice to talk about. But of those 2 teams, who are you, obviously you've got the Bills connection, but who are you more concerned for? Before the Falcons game, I would have said the Eagles, because I didn't think we'd seen as much good football out of the Eagles as we had from the Bills. But I do think that the Bills should be more worried at this stage, because the Bills, I think, were relying a bit on, Josh Allen can get us out of trouble. The defense is a problem, but we're getting Michael Hoyt and Ogunjobi back after the bye. And maybe Maxwell Harrison, the first round draft pick, can help us out at cornerback. But now you just look at it, and the offense was completely out of rhythm and couldn't get the job done, and a few key injuries. Joshua Palmer, wide receiver, and some key injuries on defense. I think the Bills should be more worried at this stage. But I think both teams, who were the red-hot favourites to be contesting the Super Bowl, and no one had a reason to think otherwise, I think they both have deep concerns. One thing I will say is I've seen a few hot takes saying that we were wrong about the Bills because, sure, they beat the Ravens and everyone thought they looked good, but it turns out the Ravens aren't any good. Anyone with eyes that has watched football, watched that first game,
and saw one of the best season opener games you're ever going to see, and elite football played by both sides. Like I don't think it's as bad as going, oh, do you know what? We were just wrong. Everyone was, like Eagles and Bills were crap from the start. I think we've seen a bit of better offense out of the Bills, but the defense is a big concern.
You do know that the Giants just walked the Eagles, right? Like they come out, Jackson Dart and Scatterbo just absolutely tore them to shreds.
Yes, I am more than aware of that, but I think we kind of knew. I don't know. I find that less surprising because we're yet to see the offense really fire.
We always say divisional games are different.
Yeah, and they're always. It's like the Patriots betting the Bills. It's always a bit funky,
Mate, the Patriots are up and about, mate. It's their division to lose now.
Well, it is. Well, they've got the tiebreaker against the Bills. I think whether are they above the Bills now in the division? I think they might be close.
Yes, sir, they are.
Because they've got the tiebreaker.
You're both 4-2, and like you said, you've got the tiebreaker above you. So,
oh well, it's a long season.
Especially if they get up and about. All right, let's speak about those Falcons that you were talking about. Into the Falcons beating the Bills. It was a very interesting game. Michael Penix did some amazing things. Bijan Robinson was incredible. Drake London had over 100 receiving yards in the first half. You kind of shut it down. He had a really good stop just before the half, which really I thought was going to turn the tide. And then again, first up, walk straight out, score first up in the third. And then it just, you couldn't get a rhythm. Like their defense, number one defense in the league, and it really showed yesterday.
Yeah, there's so many parts of this game that were important. Bijan Robinson, just so many yards. And that was the story of it. Like yards from scrimmage, I think the Falcons had over 500 yards from scrimmage and the Bills had 240 or something. That was really the story of the day. Like we just couldn't move the ball, and the Falcons could. The Falcons' defense were trouble. They had the Bills under pressure all the time. The number of times that Josh Allen, he got sacked more than he normally gets sacked. He was scrambling more than he normally has to scramble, like he was being forced to scramble. Their defensive line were beating the Bills' offensive line, who are, on most Sundays, the best offensive line in the league. They were getting pushed around by the Falcons on a number of occasions. And then on offense, the Falcons, Penix, I think, did a great job. He's still a relatively inexperienced quarterback. There are times that he doesn't make plays that more experienced quarterbacks would make, but he had an excellent game. I think there is a story here, and I think it's the Bills' story for the last 3 weeks that have been, really concerning for the Bills. And it's the story of penalties. They've had more than 10. They've had
30,
more than 10
penalties over 3 weeks.
In 3 weeks. And you could see it the first play of the game. And it was literally the first play of the game. Strip sack by the Bills, recover, we take possession, and I'm watching this game going, right, the Bills are locked in. And there's a penalty, goes back. So what should have been a defining play, that first play of the game set the tone, and all of a sudden the Falcons are on the back foot. Penalty means that doesn't happen. And then the number of times that in key moments where we were giving away penalties that just made the job so much easier for the Falcons, that's a big problem. And it's a big problem for a couple of reasons. But part of the Bills being the Bills the last few years is they win the turnover battle and they normally are disciplined and don't have lots of penalties. And both of those things aren't true this year. We've seen picks from Josh Allen and just way too many penalties. And that's kind of the story, it's hard to win games when you're giving away 10, 11 penalties.
Oh, no, impossible. And I think last week you kind of went on about the Bills beat the Bills, but I do think this week it was a bit more of the Falcons. They came out and, like you said, Bijan 250 scrimmage yards, that's incredible. Drake London couldn't stop him in the first half, so I do think this week was a little bit more the Falcons beating the Bills, but giving up, I think it was 8 penalties or 9 penalties again this week. You can't do that, and in big moments too, like 3
Killed
and 4
momentum, killed
downs.
opportunities, times
Yeah,
when we need. They got to have in plays,
yeah.
and we were shooting ourselves in the foot. But we were beaten by the Falcons, and the Falcons, I think, can come out of this feeling really good about what they're doing. And I think also the other big thing here is it was one of those games where you felt like the Falcons schemed up the right game to beat the Bills, and the Bills did not scheme up the right game to beat the Falcons. Our offense
Yeah.
was not schemed up in a way that was going to beat the Falcons. And then when Joshua Palmer went down with an ankle injury,
Who looked good early as well.
he looked great. He had a long ball on the first drive. I think it was the first catch of the Bills
Yeah.
for the Bills. Enormous. And it made you feel like, the Bills were going to be competitive. With him out and Dalton Kincaid out with injury didn't start, the two deep threats were out for the Bills, and it felt like the scheme couldn't adjust. It felt like they just didn't have enough options to get it done. And weird play selections, not leaning enough on James Cook. Like James Cook...
You saw that in the second half. He was so much better when they just turned around and said, here, have the ball.
Yeah, but I just have no idea why the Bills aren't leaning on James Cook from the start, because he's good enough that you can get ahead and you can have your opposition chasing. So it's, I think there were strategic issues, there were execution issues, discipline issues, and injuries through the game. But at the end of the day, they just weren't good enough, and the Falcons were, and that's just how it is.
It's the same in the next game that we're going to talk about, the Chiefs over the Lions. Chiefs at Arrowhead or GEHA Stadium is always going to be a difficult task. The crowd really gets into it. They always seem to lift. I know you've said, the two people that you've said are washed this year, Travis Kelce and Aaron Rodgers, both playing pretty well at the moment. Kelce, again, getting a bit more of the pills. One thing, the game's going to be the game. It was a pretty tightly contested game. I do think the Chiefs kind of had the Lions number most of the night. But there's something I want to run past you. Everyone, and I know this is going to be a little bit of Packers bias, but the Lions are now 4-2. They've lost to the Packers and now the Chiefs. They've only beaten the Bears, the depleted Ravens, the Browns, and the Bengals. When you kind of break it down into that, I don't think the Lions are as good as what everyone on the Lions say.
That is a juicy take, and I think you could be right. Everyone was so enthusiastic a week or two ago about the Lions and where they were at, but this wasn't. I don't feel like this was close.
I agree. I think the Chiefs had their number for.
Chiefs were in control of this game, and I do think you're right. Column A is maybe the Lions. Yeah, they aren't quite as good as we thought they were. I think also, and what I think is more concerning for everyone in the league, is the Chiefs looked like the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Like both sides of the ball, they were playing well, and Mahomes looked the most confident he has looked for 2 seasons, I think. Like he really was running that offense in a way that it felt like he was in full control of what he was doing, and he was one step ahead of the defense, and he did what needed to be done enough times. And I was watching that game, and I cursing to myself, going, "Oh well, turns out the AFC is exactly what it has been all these years." It's interesting though; they've made it hard for themselves. The Chiefs, a bad start to the season. They're going to be coming from behind in the division. It is going to be interesting to see. If they keep playing like they did on Monday, then, I think they can win that division, particularly, with the Chargers wobbling a little bit.
Yeah, definitely wobbling.
But it's still, they still have less margin for error between now and the end of the season if they want to be playing home finals at Arrowhead. And in the end, that could become the story of the AFC. But, I think that it'll be interesting to see if the Lions can bounce back, and if the Chiefs can be consistent like this. Because once again, like you say, it could be that the Lions aren't that good because they might have beaten some teams that aren't great. But then again, that would suggest that the Chiefs aren't that good beating the Lions. So maybe we still don't have the data yet.
I think, we are only 1/3. You say that we're 1/3 of the way through the season, which has come through incredibly quick. I think the big game this week, especially for the Lions, against the Bucs, I think we really do find We find out who's legit in this game and who's just kind of pretending. I think.
Yeah, and as we've said, I don't think there's a bigger challenge in football than the Bucks at the moment.
Even a depleted Bucks at the moment.
But I am still, I'm still buying the Lions. I do think they'll be there at the end of the season. Your hot take has some very valid points, but I do believe in them and their ability to, to build, provided they stay healthy. What Hutchinson is doing at pass rush is I kind of think some of the most elite play we've seen on defense in a number of years, and they were talking about it in the coverage, but he's at a level where sacking is not good enough for him. He is going after the ball so specifically to strip sack. He's so confident about getting to the passer, like getting to the quarterback, that he's trying to do more when he gets there. By the end of the season, I think we'll see some incredible stats from him, and he's definitely up there for Defensive Player of the Year. He's playing, out of his mind.
Comeback Player of the Year is almost locked up, but defensive
comeback Player of the Year. And you think about it, that without him last year, the season was very different for the Lions. So it's I think he's that kind of player, like Chris Jones is on defense for the Chiefs. That he's a difference maker, and a whole game can sit on his shoulders sometimes.
Yeah, game wrecker, genuine game wrecker. Mate, I know you're a little bit under the weather, so I appreciate you finding the will and the ability to get up. Make sure that you do follow us, Spotify, all of those things on the socials. Get around us. It only helps. We've had a lot of comments in YouTube lately about finding us, which is huge. We are on the up and up, believe it or not. Incredible.
If you are just joining us, if you've just found us, thanks.
Yeah.
Great to have you. You are welcome anytime, and just tell your friends. Just like, subscribe, share, all of that. But we're enjoying this season so much on the podcast. The football has been great. It is a very interesting season. I think it's been far less predictable than everyone thought. If you had a look at who our predictions were at the start of the season, it wasn't Colts and Bucs. Absolutely was not Colts and Bucs dominating everyone.
Not dominating. Well, I think we did say they were up and about, but not dominating like we thought what they are.
Yeah,
which is,
and some of the powerhouses are really struggling. But but there are great stories, as always happens. There's great stories everywhere. That the Mac Jones season going on at the 49ers is really fascinating. He's an odd cat, but he's playing some good football. And then those teams who, like, I would say also, Dak Prescott at the Cowboys is playing great football. And I say this because I wasn't paying enough attention during one of my fantasy drafts and ended up with Dak at quarterback. And it turned out to be one of the best mistakes that's ever happened.
You've done well. You've done well there. Perfect, mate. We'll see you for the preview later in the week. And because my team was the only one that won, go Pack, go.